Are you looking for a really simple and useful reporting method in QuickBooks that will enable you to better track and record your sales by category or by type? If you are, this video is for you. Tracking of sales is important for any type of business, both for service-based and product-based businesses. It's important to have a really good understanding of a business's sales and margins such that important decisions can be made. For instance, if a company is able to accurately generate segregated information about the multiple services or the products it sells, and it has limited capacity or resources, and may choose to sell those products or services that will end up rendering the greatest level of profit. So in this video, we'll be looking at two different types of sales reports. The first one is built on using multiple sub-GL or general ledger accounts, and the second one uses class tracking. Now, the first one is not my favorite, but I noticed is commonly built or used by entrepreneurs and accountants. The second one uses a feature which needs to be activated in QuickBooks. So let's start with the first type of sales report. So our first step is going to be to go into the chart of accounts in QuickBooks, and we can do so from the home page by using keyboard shortcut Control A. And you can see that in the chart of accounts I have a GL or general ledger called services income, and that's going to serve as my parent GL. And now all we're going to be doing is creating sub GL accounts. I'm going to show you how the sub GLs are created in a second. But basically, the screenshot is showing you what I want to create. I just want to create different GLs. So in my example, we're going to assume that this is a fictitious accounting services company. And like most accounting services company, they have usually 3 general service lines, which are advisory, audit, and taxation. So for starters, we'll right-click from our chart of accounts, create new account. We'll select income because we're building a sales report, and income is basically our sales. So we'll write what we want our sub-sales accounts to be called. And we'll make sure we'll tick sub-account of, and whatever we select is going to be the parent account. So you see I've created 3 sub-accounts for my 3 service lines. So the next step is going to be to create our item list. And you'll hit lists and then item list. So here's how we create the items now that we're in our item list. In my case, it's a service. We're providing accounting services. So if it was a product, maybe you select inventory part, but I don't want to get into a discussion about inventory. I'll have other videos with regards to that. So I'm just creating an item for my advisory services. And the purpose of this is so that when I create my invoice, I can simply start typing advisory. The item is gonna pop up, and I'm associating that to the sub account in the GL, which is advisory services. Same step, I'm just repeating the steps. I'm doing the next one, which is audit. There's no need to create a sub account in here. So I'm just giving it a rate. It's going to be nice and easy. When I create my invoice, I just hit audit. The rate is going to automatically come up. I can also change it. I might have a standard rate, but then for some clients, I might charge them more, I might charge them less. Creating tax. Putting in my rate. The sales tax doesn't really matter for the purpose of this video. I now have my items nicely set up. They're linked to the GL, so I can start creating invoices. So I'm just going to create some invoices just to show you how later on we'll see what kind of P&L income statement we can generate. I'm going to create a couple of invoices because I want to make an invoice for each service line that I created. just to show you how it's going to affect my income statement. And I think this is going to be the last one, so I have 3 invoices. And now here is our final product, or our semi-final product, just to show you what the income statement would look like. So we see the 3 services: advisory, audit, tax. We've taken care of our sales. However, we now want to create some costs, because it's nice to have reporting which details or gives a segregation of our sales, but of course it's also very relevant to have a good understanding of our gross profit or gross margin. We're going to be creating these costs, in this case costs of goods sold. This is essentially how we're going to be creating those costs of goods sold. From our chart of accounts, we're going to right click. We're going to have to make sure we select cost of goods sold. And that's just so we have a good format on our income statement. We'll insert the name. In this case, I'm going to want to put the name of each service line. So the first service line is auditing, or advisory rather. And initially I created the parent GL. And now I'm creating the sub GLs. So advisory is going to go into the parent GL that I created just previously, called accounting service costs. And we'll just repeat for each service line. Okay, so let's assume that I inserted some costs for each one of those services. Now if I generate a P&L, an income statement, this is what it's going to look like. Notice, however, we don't have a gross profit for each service line. We just have one big total. We took care of our first type of sales report, and you notice that there was just, what I didn't like about it personally is that there's just one big amount for gross profit. And the whole point of having segregated information is so that we can have segregated information not just for sales, but also for gross profit. So now we're going to activate the class tracking system so that we can have that information. To activate the class tracking, you're going to want to get into this screen. You can get there by clicking Edit, Preferences, then going into the tab under Accounting, and the other tab called Company Preferences, and making sure you have that little check mark on Use Class Tracking for Transactions. Here is exactly how we do it. I'm going to go to Edit, Preferences, like I mentioned before. Make sure you're in the Company Preferences tab, and tick. This might be a little redundant, but I'm just assuming that I started doing this from scratch, so I'm going to want to make sure I create those items. Notice that in this scenario, we're not creating the GLs. So that first part where we were in the chart of accounts and we created sub GLs, we're skipping that step. We're just creating the items. So I'm going to create one called advisory services. I'm going to create another one called audit, and I'm going to create another one called taxation. Putting in my amount for my advisory. I'm just repeating that step because we're still going to have to perform that step of creating items, regardless of whether we use the first method or this second method. And of course, we want to make sure that it's going to all go into, each one of these items are all going to go into services income. Now that's the difference. The difference is that we are, like in the previous step, creating items, but they're all going to go into the same GL. So it's actually going to take less time to set up this sales report method than the first one. Again, same GL. We're always using the same GL this time. Now I'm going to create the third and last sales or income item. And just like before, this is going to enable me to use that item whenever I invoice, which we'll be doing shortly. Now this part is completely different. We're going to go in lists and we're going to create our class list. So each one of those services is going to require us creating a class. So we have a class for advisory, a class for audit, and a class for, we'll keep it short instead of taxation, tax. And now we'll create our invoices. So notice I'm using the item. So my first item is advisory, 3 hours like previous, but now I got to insert the class. So I make sure I select advisory class, next invoice. It's going to be an audit service, and I got to make sure I select the audit class. Third and final invoice is going to be for taxation. Taxation item. Now I have the class. After doing all that work now, I want to see what our P&L looks like. So you can do Alt R F C, and this is what it looks like. Much like our invoices, we're going to want to create bills to associate costs to the class. And this is just a simple case of creating bills like you would normally create any other bill. Just the whole purpose of this is just to associate or to have a bill for advisory, one for audit, one for taxation, just to get some numbers in there, just to show you what the impact is going to be on our statements. So there's going to be a section now when you enter a bill called class, and you're going to want to enter the related class. And now when you're selecting the GL, the expense, you don't see it, but it's accounting service costs. So it's always going in the same GL. The only difference is you're associating it to whatever class it would have to go into. Now, this is a situation where I'm creating a bill. Normally in an accounting firm, you'd probably be using timesheets. So your cost is derived from the time your employees are spending time doing that service. But this is just for illustrative purposes and to move things along quickly to show you what the impact is going to be on the P&L template. Now it's time for the moment of truth. And voila, our P&L. We can get there by clicking Alt R F C, and you can see we have classes for the income, the cost, and gross profit. What I'm showing you here is the two methods compared. I exported each P&L or income statement to Excel, and I just want to show you the difference between the two. Personally, like I've said all along, method number 2 is a much better, more practical method. And the major difference, of course, is the fact that in method 1 does not have gross profit segregated by the type of service that we're providing. Or in the case of a product-based business or a manufacturing business, you could have it segregated by product. And what I like about method 2 is you have headings: advisory, audit, tax. What's nice about these reports and what you can do with these reports is export them to Excel and then create some kind of pie chart or bar chart or whatever you like. There's also that feature within QuickBooks, but I always like exporting stuff so I can send it easy, manipulate the data in any way I want so that I can customize my own type of graph, just showing you some options. It's very easy. You just need to highlight the section that you want to convert into some kind of chart. So it's nice to have a pie chart for sales, so you can see percentage of what you sold the most. You can also get a bar chart to compare sales with cost or gross profit. There's really limitless ideas. I'm just showing you some options. This one just has income and gross profit. And you can choose the colors, whatever you want. And this is always nice to send to a manager or someone who's not an accountant. Very often, they just want to see pictures. They just want to see graphs. They might not want to see numbers. So that's why I think charts and graphs are very useful. I hope you found this video useful. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.